All right, welcome again to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. What are we talking about today, Samuel?
Crown of Swords. We've got some Matt, and I wore the Snatch Specialist shirt because we probably should climax today.
Speaking of which, we start off with Matt uh, in a bit of a state, eager to be gone, uh, because as he so the bottom of page 741, the bloody woman treated him like a toy. He was not going to put up with it anymore. He was not. Light, who was he trying to fool? If they did not grab this bowl of the winds and get out of Ibu Dar, Tylin would be pinching his bottom and calling him her little pigeon again tonight. Uh, I think that's part of Jordan's another one of his kind of oblique ways of well, it really fits with Matt's character, and I hadn't really thought of it in these terms before, but we talked about this when we got the first time we really had an in-depth Matt point of view storyline, which is um after he gets healed and leaves the White Tower in the
Mhm.
Dragon Reborn, the hero in the night chapter, and he's grumbling and complaining the whole time. He's literally leaping off the top of a hayloft to battle a half dozen ruffians who are threatening a woman. And then he does the same thing again when he finds out the girls are in trouble from Gabriel slash Ravine, grumbling the whole time, and yet he's still rushing off into the danger. Well,
Well, even more analogous to what's going on here, when Rand's ordering him around, he's grumbling and mumbling the whole time, but
mhm,
he still goes with it.
mhm. Yeah, he uh as he said, uh I think he said this already, that where he yells that he's supposed to do the chasing. Oh yeah, because it's after the first time uh he and Tylin have snoo. Uh, and she laughs at him because that's your conception, but things are different here. And for all of his grumbling and complaining, he clearly likes it. He's clearly enjoying himself because as he thinks, oh, who am I kidding? But he's going to grumble and complain that things aren't exactly like he would like them to be. Um, and then we get the little nugget about the ages of
Yeah,
the
that's
of
what
the
I
kin.
was. Yeah,
Uh,
I didn't want to pass over that, so I was fingered on it just in case you kept going.
yeah.
But yeah, this is our first clue into kind of a further plot line
Hmm.
with the Aes Sedai and kin and just channelers in general and how they age.
Right. And how starkly different the ages are between the oldest kin and the oldest Aes Sedai.
Well, and
Uh,
not only that, the difference in look, ageless
hmm
face versus just being older and slower in aging,
hmm Um,
which is all good for the kin because that sure does help you blend in a little bit better.
yeah, yeah, big time. Um, let's see. Uh, the next getting back to Matt. Then the servant shows up with a picnic basket and a note from Queen Tylin because you did not breakfast and you must maintain your strength. On the bottom of 744, Matt's cheeks warmed. The woman merely looked at him, but she had seen considerably more of him than when she first showed him into Tylin's presence. Considerably more. She had brought a supper tray. She had brought supper on her tray last night while he tried to hide under the silk bed sheet. He did not understand it. These women had him jumping about and blushing like a girl. He just could not understand because it's different. You're supposed to do the chasing,
Mm-hmm.
and there's something about not being in control that makes you feel awkward and embarrassed.
The only
And
thing in this storyline that I wish Jordan would have done, and I think it would have made it less rapey, is had at least a blip of a moment, just a 1-page moment, where he laid down a hard no for some reason, book related.
Hmm.
One of the things going on, he put down a hard no, and he of course chased and pulled her knife out and everything, and he put his foot down hard no, and she
Hmm.
stopped.
Hmm.
As in, it would have given you a sense of there still is some contempt, even though she's being forceful and forward and plays with their knife and all of that. But if he
Uh-huh.
had a reason and said no, 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 not tonight, that would have been a good little moment to make it a little less rapey in the long run. Because the impression we get is she'd kill him if if he kept saying no, or at least
Hmm.
use the knife on him. And I'm sure he wouldn't let himself die. But
I do think we kind of get that at the end of this arc, which maybe we can talk about a little in spoilers when Matt does finally leave Ibudar. I do think we get a little bit of that. I think that was Jordan kind of doing what you're talking about, is wrapping it up, putting a bow on it, and giving the final, because he's giving these, these hints, these intimations, like Matt's point of view here of who is he kidding? He's, as much as he says,
the
I'm
implication,
out of
who
here.
who am I kidding? I'm going to let it happen.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And uh and this bit here where what's got him so flummoxed isn't necessarily um how aggressive Tylin is per se. It's that women aren't supposed to make him feel like this. And not just Tylin, but like as he says here, um the kind of knowing looks and giggles of the palace servants that,
Mm-hmm.
makes him blush and makes him shy. And so uh the 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 servant woman here makes a comment. Where is it? Are all northern men so shy? Um,
Yeah, I guess I'm a little bit, maybe this is again reading books at different points in your life. When I first read this one, I don't think I had ever even been laid, you know. But now being in dabbling in the circles of hookup culture and just friend circles and people dating around within those friend circles, women talk.
they do.
If you have slept with a mid-20s female, all her friends know every crevice of your body. And then you walk into that group and you get kind of that knowing giggle, that knowing look, that because
Hmm.
they talk to each other about their experience. They say a gentleman never kisses and tells. Yeah, women don't have that same code of honor. Uh, and even when a guy tells, it's not as detailed. It's like, yeah, I did her, but it ends there. And all the other guys are like, yeah, all right, score, fist bump. Whereas the
Hmm.
girl is like, oh, how was it? Did he do this? Did he do that? Or you know, and yeah, they know. This is how it roll, how they roll. And Matt being from the country where they don't talk about things, you don't get that part of the women because the women are still talking about the things within the
Hmm.
circle. But here in Ibudar, everybody just like, mm-hmm.
Yeah, but here there is occasional spillover from the women's circle into, mixed company. So it's well known that, yeah, they're talking and they're looking.
Mm-hmm.
Um where was I going?
I mean, it's realistic. It is realistic in the real world because the hookup culture in the States is the way it is now. But say like Lavernia, when we were there, if we had all of a sudden gone to France or Paris,
Mm,
especially, and just started walking around, we would have been like, holy crap. They're a little more open about this than we are. Or
yeah.
Amsterdam. The first time I walked through the red light district, I was like, and I thought I was grown by then, but it was just a new experience. It was
Yeah.
okay. This
I've
is
seen some things, but these are some new things.
yeah. Well, my thing about the red light district was it's not like Las Vegas prostitutes with summer teeth. Some are there
Mhm.
and some are not. Uh, no, no, they're like models. It's
Yeah.
like something you would see in a movie, and I was just like, oh shit. I know we just got married, but hun, you got some euros. All right, back to the book. But
All
yeah,
right, back to the
cultural
book.
cultural differences, but he's really not complaining, even though he's bitching and moaning.
Yep.
He's venting, not saying no.
Um, well, in much the same way, it parallels to what kind of interrupts the Tylin train of thought, which is Elayne and Nyneave and the shenanigans they've been up to. Um, and keeping Matt in the dark and him wondering what the heck is going on
Mm-hmm.
and having to play catch up on 746. Uh, Nyneave and Elayne had told him about the Windfinders, reluctantly, and in sworn secrecy, after trying to hold back even where Nyneave wanted to go, much less why, and not a single blush for the effort. Women keep promises in their own way, so the saying went. Um, Come to think of it, Lawton and Belvin were not with the rest of the Red Arms. Maybe Nynaeve thought to make up for the other by keeping them with her now in their own way. And those are obviously we know, as Lan is about to tell him in a minute, that your men are dead because Balefire and Moghidian.
Mm-hmm.
So he's a little annoyed.
Yeah, and realistically, that is annoying because he should have been the first person they went to with the fact that his troops were dead.
Hmm.
Even if they held back, why? Hit the ship they were on sank and they didn't make it. That
Hmm.
would have been even better than what he got.
Yeah, that Lan has to tell him after the fact, and he is um rightfully outraged. Um, and of course, Elayne and Nynaeve are offended that he's mad at them. This is definitely a reason, but along what we've been talking about, he's still there, and he's not
Mm-hmm.
going anywhere, and he's still going to fulfill his promise, and he's still going to do everything he thinks he needs to do to protect them. He's just going to bitch and moan the whole time.
Now we do get something in this chapter that going forward is a big deal because they don't give us the private conversations of Nyneave and Lan, but they do tell us that Lan they did it the Sea Folk way, where Nyneave is
Hmm.
100%
Hmm.
in charge on the outside, in front of people, but Lan is 100%
Uh-huh.
in charge when they're in private. And Lan at this point, with the way he acts here in this scene, probably gives Nynaeve a talking to about soldiers and generals and how this has to be. And we start to see Nynaeve actually transform a lot going forward.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And it's not just Lan being there because love makes everything better. No, it's Lan being there because he can explain that part of Min that Nynaeve has
Yes.
no clue about.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really good point. Um, it is probably a major component for why Nynaeve becomes such a favorite character in the second half of the series, where she can, in the first half, sometimes be rather annoying
Mm-hmm.
and 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 difficult to like. But she, you know, in much the same way that Min starts to become a more interesting and deeper character when she's with Rand, because um that companionship, that point and counterpoint is what what makes her grow, and what makes her a deeper character, and then also seeing the impact it has on Rand.
See, I would say it goes back further than that with Min. I think Min actually became interesting with the Swan Star storyline because she was put in a position where she had to be someone different and just
Mm,
be getting her thoughts. It was, she had a kind of a semi rough upbringing, being a barmaid basically
mhm.
from adolescence, but this was real true hardship and life and death hardship. and she had to do what she had to do to survive, and you saw her grow during
Hmm.
that. Where she, a book before, which would have been about 2 years before when we first meet her, was I am woman. I'm a strong woman. Don't judge me. Don't do this. Don't do that. Don't question my experience just because I'm young. That annoying young girl. But now that she's in true hardship, she's like, holy crap, I have to learn what I need to do. And you saw
Hmm.
that during that storyline. And I think that was necessary for her dealings with Rand.
True.
She
True.
had she had to go from arrogant, talented, but arrogant young woman or young girl to actual experienced woman.
Hmm.
And she had to go trial by fire just like everybody else in these books because we're in a dire time.
Yeah. Yeah. And
And not only trial by fire, but trial by fire outside of her comfort zone because she had to be Elmendrita. She
mm-hmm.
couldn't be just Min.
Yeah, which she hated.
Yeah. But
Um,
notice how much more Elmendrita she is with Rand than she would have been had she never had to play that part.
where is it where they actually, because Lan just says, uh, Nyneave and I were married last night by the mistress of the ships. The Athon Maer have several unusual marriage customs. There were surprises for both of us. Uh, where is it where it's actually explained? Is it later?
It might be later.
Yeah. I, it is a very interesting custom. But I can't remember exactly where it is, so maybe I don't want to go into it just yet. Um,
Yeah, but no, I think they explain the marriage customs when you meet them on the ship before this.
hmm.
When the Master of Swords is trying to nudge,
I'd forgotten about that. So
yeah,
you get the first glimpse
introduction
of
to
it.
that,
They
yeah.
yeah, you get a little more detail when Lan and Nynaeve go through it, but yeah, I'd forgotten about that interaction. Uh
Well, and then add to the Matt mindfuck that's going on here. We've got Highland, we've got everything going on. We've got Nynaeve and Elayne being secretive. We've got Lan finally telling him the truth, and we've got Beslin, who even in our modern day hookup culture would be uncomfortable with the son being cool with it and wanting to hang out.
yeah, yeah. This
Oh, you're
is
doing my mom? All right, cool. Let's hang out afterwards.
getting into
I
MILF
got
Manor
Call of
territory
Duty
here.
on, yeah, I got Call of Duty on the Xbox. Let's, don't last too long.
Jordan was
It's like
decades ahead of
it's like
MILF
looking at
Manor.
your best friend and being like, "Oh, you're my new stepdaddy now." Wouldn't be comfortable.
Uh um
I'm as liberal as it gets when that kind of stuff, and I still wouldn't be comfortable with that.
yeah. Speaking of Beslin, he is a fun little minor character with his yeah, he knows what's going on, and I'm just glad my mother chose someone I like. So we got that earlier, and then um when Lan mentions that they were married, uh the blessing of the light be upon you and your bride, Beslin murmured politely with as much of a bow as the confines of the coach would allow. So he also, he's still there's that element of bro there, but then when it's, oh, you've gotten married, and he's very formal, very polite, very gentlemanly, and then he shifts again when Lan tells them about Moghidian and the Balefire, and Moghidian, Beslin breathed, eyes shining. The man was probably seeing fun. Moghidian, Nalesean breathed, but in his case it was more of a groan, and he gave his pointed beard a fitful jerk. Those bloody flaming women. I hope you don't include my wife, Lan said coldly. No, no, just, no. Um,
It would be just like Nynaeve to get him killed by her husband. which, for spoilers, a little foreshadowing there, by the way.
That's a great line. Oh, I wonder if, are you thinking what I think you're thinking? That's an interesting insight. Okay. And then the queen thinks I need new clothes. But the note is besides just being some fun comic relief, it is another, I think, insight into Matt's state of mind and why he's acting the way he did, because she took the liberty of moving his things into her apartment. He desperately needs to be his own man. I mean, we
Mm-hmm.
have seen that from the very beginning. He was stupid show and a stupid Matt not going the way um from very early on, Matt was the first one who wanted to leave the fellowship.
Mm-hmm.
Um because uh he wanted, especially once he started getting some coin in his pocket, he wanted to see the world. He wanted to see the world. He wanted to dance with all the pretty girls. Uh, you know, uh, he wanted those kind of adventures, not these kind of adventures. But he always got sucked back in because he can't abandon his friends. He just can't. You know, despite all his grumblings about the pattern and Tavarin, binding him and sucking him back in, he can't abandon his friends. But that is what he that is his core, is, the rambling man. He is, he has some serious wanderlust. And that's why he keeps asking, does the daughter of the nine moons mean anything to you? Because he's terrified of being tied down.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if that's part of where her name, of where Tylin comes from, is she's tying him down more
Mm-hmm.
and more and more. Literally, and now very figuratively, with we're moving in together. Oh crap. No more nights drinking in the inn and dancing with the serving girls and giving them a bit of a canoodle.
Mm-hmm.
I'm about to be a kept man.
Well, not only that, it just the fact that he can't leave.
Yeah.
He can't. Okay, I'm bored with Ibudar. Now off to the next place.
And and I think that's another place where Jordan's giving us, you know, kind of obliquely, because from Matt's point of view, Matt's not going to think about it as this is kind of creepy and rapey. Um, I just don't think he would think of it in those terms. Uh, Especially since you talked about, you kind of pointed out in the very first scene where she pulls the dagger on him, he could get out of that if he wanted to,
Mm-hmm.
with relative ease. Yes, Tylin is quick with a dagger and she has some training because she's in an important position and a target, but Matt's freaking Matt. I mean, he's the guy who killed Couladin. He could get out of it if he really wanted to, but he doesn't really want to. But it's uh
Well, it's a very male way, anyways, because
yes.
some woman is a little bit aggressive towards you. Even if it kind of turns you off, you'd be like, okay, ha ha ha. No, 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 and you maybe just
Yeah.
scoot away or whatever. And it never becomes that it is rapey until you give that hard no that
Hmm.
says, I said no and I'm leaving, and then they make
Hmm.
you,
Hmm.
and he always kind of pushed away and nudged away, but then ultimately consented in the end.
So there's this dichotomy of, he does, you know, enjoy Tylen's company. He does like her to some degree, but he he it drives him nuts that it's not on his own terms in his own way.
Mm-hmm. Where you get the exact opposite of that with this new culture of filming yourself in your booty shorts and sports bra lifting, and anybody that looks your way is raping you. That's the dichotomy between men and women. We'll ha 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 until they actually hold a gun to your head, whereas women will take any clue and
Hmm.
attach it to the intent.
Hmm. All right. So moving along into the next chapter, um, where he
Oh, shit goes down now.
yep. Jeez, I'd forgotten that. Okay, before we get there, the top of page 752. Sticking a wedge of dark yellow cheese and a butt end of bread into his pocket, he stuffed the basket well under the seat. He was hungry, but someone in the kitchen had been in too much of a hurry. Most of the basket was filled by a clay pot full of oysters, but the kitchen had forgotten to cook them. What are oysters supposedly eat before? I'd forgotten that part of Laren, the servant, saying you've got to keep up your strength, and Tylin's note saying basically the same thing, and most of the basket is a pot full of raw oysters.
Which I love oysters. I don't know about you. I know you're a little more picky about eating than I am, but
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of oysters and mussels and whatnot. When I was in Japan, the grandma I was staying with, she made a really good clam soup. It was like these little tiny bottlenecks that you just slurp them down in one go in like a really strong miso kind of broth. That was darn good, because I didn't refuse anything I was given, which meant I ate some weird things. But just because I wanted to be polite, and I was like, oh well, that's surprisingly good. The snails, I wasn't a big fan of the giant sea snails, but I ate them.
well, I like oysters enough that even when I'm wade fishing and I come across a whole one, I'll crack it open with a pocket knife and pour a little beer over it. And just
I don't know that I would do that close to Texas City.
you're gonna die some way somehow.
That's fair enough. Okay, so uh that then down at the bottom is where I was going, where we start to get a little more in depth of what's going on with Nyneave and Elayne and the Sea Folk wedding ceremony as we get her in mid-sentence. Will work out, of course, but who would think the Sea Folk of all people would demand such a thing, even just in private? But Nyneave, Elayne said, as she stood, this is to your point about women talking. If last night was as glorious as you say, how can you complain about Erp? And then they notice the guys are there. Uh, uh, and then Lan and or Nynaeve suddenly starts ignoring everybody but Lan and making things extra awkward. Um, I like the kind of the summation of Matt's thoughts as he's looking at this interaction between Lan and Nynaeve and the way they're looking at her. In his experience, old memories or new, there were only two times a woman admitted she was wrong: when she wanted something and when it snowed at midsummer. Lan, she began unsteadily, you mustn't think I would talk about the water cut in smoothly, bowing and offering her arm. We are in public, Nynaeve. Whatever you want to say in public, you may. May I escort you to the boat? Yes, yes, in public, you will escort me. Um, I I love the juxtaposition between um Nynaeve's kind of well it stupid show. Why did I This is why it was terrible and it didn't work and it kind of ruined things going forward, that they've already had Schnoo Schnoo at the end of the first season of the terrible show, because this works so well because we've had 6.5 books of build-up that
Mhm.
this isn't who Nynaeve is, but it is. That's why she's acting this way. That's why
Well,
she's acting.
it's even more than that. It's the just sheer discomfort of the thing because you don't do it till they get to this point, anyways.
Mhm. That.
It's the not knowing how to talk about it because nobody talked about it.
Mhm. And
But that's okay because Mistress Alvier and Master Alvier let Egwene and Rand stay together before,
yikes.
even though she's supposed to be 16. But she has her hair braided, so it's okay.
But not just the, you know,
Because she
this is
floated down a river.
yeah. That this is extra super awkward because we don't talk about these things in public, but clearly they were getting very detailed in the coach. It was glorious. Um, she has spent her entire, not just adult life, but young adult life, from the point where she apprenticed as as a wisdom, that, this is my life, this is what I'm doing. Men in a romantic idea, I don't think was ever on her radar until land came along. So because she's so strong, she's so masculine, in much the same way that Matt has been turned on his head by the way Tylin is acting and everyone in Ibudar is acting at this situation. Nynaeve's been turned on her head because of her strength, because she's such a masculine and still feminine woman. Because she doesn't, this is entirely new to her, that she's acting like puppy love, because I think it is for her. I think this is her first love. I think Lan may have been her first crush, because she was so hyper focused on becoming a wisdom, and then when she became one, um so prickly about uh her position and her authority. So she's acting like a schoolgirl.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then we get the great juxtaposition. Here's the bit I was really looking forward to on page 754. Um, Opening his mouth, he raised an admonitory finger, um, because he's going to yell at the ladies for being themselves. And Elayne poked him in the chest with hers, her scowl beneath that plumed hat so cold it made his toes hurt. Mistress Corley, she said in the icy voice of a queen pronouncing judgment, explain to Nyneave and me the significance of those red flowers in the basket, which I see you at least have the shame enough to have hidden. His face went redder than Nynaeve's had thought of. A few paces away, Rianne Corley and the other two were trying on hats and adjusting dresses the way women did every time they stood up, sat down, or moved 3 steps. Yet despite giving their attention to their clothes, they had enough left over for glances in his direction, and for once they were neither disapproving nor startled. He had not known the bloody flowers meant anything. Um, 10 sunsets would not have done for his face. So, Elaine's voice was low for his ears alone, but it dripped disgust and contempt. It's true. I could not believe it of you. Not even you. I'm sure Nynaeve couldn't. Any promise I made to you is abolished. I will not keep any promise to a man who could force his attentions on a woman, on any woman, but especially on a queen who has offered him force my attentions on her. It is revealing and something of a flaw in Elaine's character that we're going to see again as we kind of reach the climax of this story. Those were kind of my big thoughts on the conclusion of Matt and the girl storyline here. Is it makes me curious exactly how Rianne explained the meaning of those flowers, but they're not looking at him like he's some sort of monster. So I wouldn't think they said it in a way that they thought could be inferred that way, let alone
Mm-hmm.
said outright, or they too would be looking at him in disgust. And everyone else in Ibudar seems to know what's going on and be fine with it. This is just, this is how things work. For Elayne to automatically jump to the idea that he forced his attention on her. I mean, you can understand why she's so livid, because that is the kind of thing that that would outrage and disgust any woman, let alone one in a position of power who has the authority to do something about it. But after everything you have yourself witnessed of Matt, to make that jump is something of a flaw in her character, I feel. Um, And then when he goes on his diatribe
Yeah.
of, you listen to me, that woman won't take no for an answer. I say no and she laughs at me. She starved me, bullied me, chased me down like a stag. She has more hands than 6 women I ever met. She threatened to She threatened to have the serving women undress me if I didn't let her. Abruptly, what he was saying hit him, and who he was saying it to. He managed to close his mouth before he swallowed a fly. What I mean to say is, you don't understand, he muttered. You have it all backwards. And then, when the truth comes out, a faint blush crept into her cheeks, but her face became solemn as a marble bust. It appears that I may have misunderstood, she said soberly. That is very bad of Tylin. He thought her lips twitched. Have you considered practicing different smiles in a mirror, Matt?
Yeah. And this is the thing. It's not I'm sorry. It's not I feel bad about what I said. I'm going to just turn it into teasing you.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's what a guy would have done from the beginning. But no, there's no I was wrong. There's no
Mm-hmm.
it's immediately what's best for me inside.
Yeah. Yeah. Um,
Well, even with the under the breath, a taste of your own medicine, it's the well, maybe I was wrong, but you deserve it.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And despite all that, so halfway down page 756.
Which implies that he would do all the things he said in his diatribe to get a woman, which he never would.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. That when he goes down that litany and then things are things are getting progressively worse before he claps his teeth shut because he realizes he's already embarrassed himself enough and doesn't want to say any more. So, yeah, he would never do those things.
Mm-hmm.
And her immediate assumption was he had done those and perhaps worse.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and despite all that, he stared straight ahead. Bloody women, bloody promises. Removing his hat long enough to pull the leather cord from around his neck, he reluctantly shoved it in her direction. The silver fox head dangled beneath his fist. You and Nyneave will have to decide which of you wears this. But I want it back when we leave Udar, you understand? The moment we leave. Suddenly he realized he was walking alone. Turning, he found Elayne standing stock still 2 paces back, staring at him with Rianne and the rest clustered behind her. What's the matter now? He demanded. Oh, yes, I know all about Malkidian. Trying to keep her secret, and 2 of my men dead after you promised. Well, we'll talk about that later. I made a promise too. I promised to keep the pair of you alive. If Malkidian shows up, she'll go after you two. Now here. So after all of that, I mean, they at least have a chance against Malkidian. They can channel, and they're pretty darn strong with it too.
Mm-hmm.
He has no chance if someone like Malkidian comes at him without the Foxhead medallion. But he's giving it up because he made a promise, despite how snooty and obnoxious Elayne just was to him. Um, I do wonder if Jordan is trying to make Elayne more sympathetic here with her reaction. Um, that she's not going to admit it, but maybe now she does finally see how wrong she was. I don't know. She still seems like Elayne to me, but the way she shook her head slowly in puzzlement, that to me that's an element of she maybe she's starting to realize how wrong she was about Matt. For precisely that reason, that after everything that just transpired, he's going to leave himself open to attack and vulnerable and hand this over to me. Um,
But we do get a taste of how Jordan understands women, or
mhm,
Jordan and Harriet,
mhm,
because we talk about this coalitions and females and how their internal politics are. She makes a statement that I won't do this if Nynaeve and Avienda can't have it as well.
mhm,
Equality, equity, everybody's equal. Women will take advantage, but they won't take overt advantage. The damn foxhead would be, look at me, I'm in the better position right now.
mhm.
And I mean, they do it naturally, and sometimes it's for the right reasons. And in this case, it's for the right reason. But at the same time, that's the difference between men and women.
Uh, at the end of her long little soliloquy there, where she puts the fox head medallion back over Matt's head and tucks it back into his shirt. Um, that faint blush returned to her cheeks. I am sorry I laughed at you. She cleared her throat, looking away. Sometimes I forget my duty to my subjects. You are a worthy subject, Matron Cawthon. I will see that Nynaeve understands the right of you and Tylin. Perhaps we can help. No, he spluttered. I mean, yes, I mean, that is, oh, kiss a flaming goat if I know what I mean. Um, oh, I do like this little tidbit before we get back to the meat of it. He goes through this great list of curses. Kiss a flaming goat, sheep swallow, and bloody buttered onions. Um, her lips moved silently, and for an instant, he had the strange impression that she was repeating what he had just said. Of course not. He was seeing things. Um, I guess if you're going to read that passage charitably, I think the clearing her throat and looking away might be her her stubborn streak and her um kind of training to be a monarch on and then training to be an Aes Sedai. For authoritarians like that, you can never be seen to be wrong. And so on top of the practical political elements of it, she's just a stubborn person too,
Well,
on
and,
top of
and
all
there's
that.
another word too, spoiled. When she needed Lenny a little bit longer because
Mm,
Lenny was the only
hmm
person to tell her she was wrong.
hmm
And when you're of that position, people are a little reluctant to tell you you're wrong. So
Yeah.
you always think you're right.
So if I'm going to read that charitably, I think Elayne does finally understand the kind of person Matt is, but she can't bring herself to fully apologize because there were the stubbornness plus I can't look weak.
Well, we talked about one of the main things we talk about through the first 6 books so far. It has been kind of a major theme is the growth, character growth, right? This is one thing that makes this series of books so good that even minor characters we see growth
Hmm
moments. And Matt is the epitome of don't judge a book by its cover. And he also is the epitome of when it comes to that exact kind of dynamic with women. So he is the best tool for Jordan to use to be a growth tool for the ladies, especially the ones that are, kind of set in their everything should be this way.
Yeah. Um, the kind of the ending here is uh a good kind of wrap up to that idea is gaping, he watched her lift her skirts and cloak to make her way along the landing. She understood. She understood, and not one acid little comment, not one cutting remark, and he was her subject, her worthy subject. I so I think that's, you know, Jordan's way of kind of finishing off this moment of growth for Elayne that yeah, what she said she understood, and by Matt's thinking there, no acid comment, no cutting remark. So, no, yeah, she actually does understand. She actually means it this time. Um, and then we get on to the the action with Beslin complaining that all these red sashed wise women means that no one's gonna dare lift a finger, so we won't have any fun. Um, and Matt says, "Oh, maybe, you know, where is it? Um, yeah, he makes some offhand remark to Nalesean about, you know, you want to die in bed, when he's complaining that he's going to be bored, which he feels bad about later. Um,
Mm-hmm. Not much later.
yep. So the I don't know. I'm still a little. It's hard to be sympathetic to Elayne that, yeah, okay, she kind of gets it. She finally maybe really does understand, especially when
Well, no, we're not sympathetic at this point because she's in the learning stage. She just came
oh
across
yeah,
something she can't wrap her brain around, and she showed the ability to accept it, but she hasn't, or the ability to tolerate it, but she hasn't accepted it yet because
yeah.
she immediately went into queen mode as well.
There's an element though of I think what really solidifies it for Elayne and Nyneave here is how Matt stands up to the Golem and won't retreat.
Mm-hmm.
Um, even though this thing is freakishly, supernaturally strong and fast, that Matt is hard pressed, to fight him off.
Well,
Um,
and when we see the golem going forward, this is probably the biggest testament, not Couladin, but the
mhm,
Golem, the biggest testament that Matt actually might be the best fighter in the series.
mhm. Yeah, yeah. Because this is, this isn't even a highly trained person. Yeah, Kulinin was born with a
Yeah,
spear in his
yeah.
hand,
The
but
the highest
this
trained
thing isn't
human
human. Yeah,
versus this killing machine that was designed for it, and it has
yeah.
had thousands of years to get really good at it.
Um, but he kind of already did that in the stone. But oh well. I guess they didn't see it, so it wasn't real. Uh,
Wait.
about standing in front of danger to
Oh, okay.
rescue
Yeah.
them.
I thought you were talking about fighting a
Um,
golem. I was like, or
yeah.
something equivalent. I was like, yeah, he knocked out Tylin.
Well, although they were in a position where they were resisting and fighting back, and from their point of view, they weren't completely wrong that we had the situation under control. We were getting ourselves out. They have absolutely no chance against a golem.
Mm-hmm.
That they are utterly helpless, and I think that is probably a major element for why their reaction to Matt after this is so much different than in the stone, because they realize just how screwed they were without him. Um, but before we get there, uh, we still get the you know the arrogance of Elayne and Nyneave, who uh have not figured out, I don't know if Rumsfeld was the one who came up with this saying or if he got it from somewhere else, but you have known unknowns and you have unknown unknowns. You don't know what you don't know, in other words. And Elayne and Nyneave are about to learn that the really, really hard way.
Mm-hmm.
And other people are going to suffer for it. Um, to wit, page
Was that
764.
Mattis or Rumsfeld?
Rumsfeld is who I first heard say it.
Okay, because I had heard it from Mattis as well, who's
Yeah.
pretty
Uh,
wicked.
let's see. Oh yeah. Really, Matt Nynaeve said, when he told off Harnan and half the Red Arms to find any back way in and guard it. Don't you see by now there's no need? Well, maybe Moghidian likes back doors, he said dryly. Uh,
Giggity.
let's Shite our Heron. Oh, too soon? Um,
Now you just got rapey again.
yep.
Yeah, which that one was very, very solidly implied.
Oh yeah. Um, you told him Nynaeve breathed furiously at Lan. Um, Elayne made an exasperated sound. This is no time to stop for an argument, Nynaeve. The bull is upstairs. So she goes rushing off. Matt would have gone too if Nynaeve and Lan had not been in the way. Would you let me by Nynaeve? Nynaeve! Um, I'm not angry, Lan, she said. Yes, you are, he replied calmly, but he had to be told. Uh, I like the parallel between this scene and when right after Lan rescues her, um, and and she keeps insisting, I'm not angry. Yes, you are. You know, Lan recognizes it, but he's just calm all the way through it because he knows this is who Nynaeve is, and he's fully accepting of it. Um,
Except she's kind of doing what she did to Brigitte as well earlier in the series. I won't be angry with you.
that's a good point. That's
Yeah.
a good point. Uh,
But Lan gets through to her a little bit faster by being stoic. But, male heroes aren't supposed to be stoic these days. So
yeah. Speaking of male heroes, when the Black Ajash show up, um, without taking her eyes from Nynaeve, Fally in motion for the men behind her to come forward. Lan moved. He did not draw his sword, and against Aes Sedai, he should have had no chance if he had, no chance in any case. But one moment he was standing still, and the next he had thrown himself at the pair. Just before he struck, he grunted as though hit hard, but he crashed into them, carrying both Black Sisters to the dusty floor. Um, and then all heck breaks loose, and stupid this is another thing that I don't trust the creators of this awful series with the name Wheel of Time that has nothing to do with the Wheel of Time to do well. How is it that with pretty limited words, I mean, the impression Jordan gives you from an action scene is much more expansive than the actual writing of the scene. His action scenes aren't really that long. When he writes a fight scene, take because you brought up last time how transformative Rand versus Turok was, and it's a big fight, between half a dozen versus a dozen guys, right? In a big room, but he focuses in on Rand and what Rand is feeling and thinking, and then just gives you the impression of the fight that's going on around him. And this scene would be something that if you had a good fight choreographer, I mean, the classic guys that came out of Hong Kong cinema, well, the guys that did John Wick, that to me, this is reminiscent of some of those scenes, those close quarter fight scenes in the John Wick series, where you have, but those guys came from the stunt and fight choreography world. There was only one notable fight scene in the whole series, and it was the end of the first episode, and to me it was only okay. And the scenes I saw of Rings of Power were god awful.
Well, you seem to have liked the scene with Rand's mother, where she's fighting the golden bee.
Yes, that one was pretty good. I forgot about that one.
I liked the choreography of that for some of the same reasons you did, but I hated that it was a pregnant woman about to give birth. Having trained many pregnant women, they cease to be able to move well and they waddle by that by that point.
Yep.
There is no way an actual about to give birth
E-
naturally pregnant woman would have moved like that.
Even assuming that Rand was a preemie and he was born prematurely because of the stress
You know, he wouldn't have the
on her.
stature he did if he was a preemie. There's
Yeah, but there is that as well.
preemie trickles down to the end of your
The
life. It
the
is
good parts of that scene were great, but the scene overall did have
the
its
premise
issues.
of the scene.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Which
Um,
realistically we can actually blame a little bit on this book because the setup for the premise of the scene is in here. That's actually accurate, where she went to war even though she was that pregnant.
yeah, yeah. Um, well, but it just says she ran with the spears even though she wasn't supposed to, because
Yeah, it does
what's his
never says how
face?
well she did, but
Yeah, and if if she's surrounded by spear sisters and if they're looking after her, then okay, you can see how she would make it through at least far enough to where she could kind of crawl off and give birth by herself. But
to take out several Illianer
mhm.
special forces,
and,
basically.
and when
Yeah.
Tam tells the story in his fever dream, it makes it sound like she had already given birth and had
Well, when
died
Tam finds her in the
because
show, she'd already given birth too.
no, he helps her
I got to rewatch that.
because he comes on
I
at the
thought he
end of
hears
that
the
fight
crying
scene.
and comes in.
That's in the book. That's how he
Okay.
he he went off by himself just to get away from the
Well, I guess
gore
I
of
guess it's a good thing I
the
plan on
battle.
rewatching it before the second
And
season.
yeah, he comes in after she's killed like three or four guys, and she can't really stand anymore. Is how I remember it. She's like she can't really stand anymore, but in seeing the state she's in, he takes off his helmet and then gets down on a knee to help her.
Yeah.
But the way it's described, he finds her already dead and Rand nearly dead because he's so cold.
Yeah, and in real life, it would have been a situation where she ran with the Spear sisters but couldn't keep up, and then someone would find her. That
Mhm.
would be the more likely. I mean, I've trained people up until the day before they gave birth, and there we'll just say there's lots of considerations. They can still do stuff, but
Mhm.
it's not the same. We're
No.
talking about 10% capacity, and 10% capacity is not going to kill golden bees.
Oh yeah. Um, well, the companions, especially because they weren't just gold. They, I'm pretty sure those were companions because they were, Tam was with them and he was dressed
Mhm.
just like them. So those were the best of them. Um, anyway, it's a long ranty way to say I love this fight scene, and it's the kind of scene that the books are entirely satisfying in 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 the images he's able to put in your mind. But there are times where, man, I would love to see that on the screen, and this is one of those times of I would love to see this, you know, well cast so the people look like you imagine, like they're described. You're in a dirty, dingy, dark hallway in tight quarters, um, with a hard fight with Matt and being pressed. Uh, and then you've got guys randomly getting knocked aside if they get too close to the channelers. Um, and then I also kind of like you don't uh, I like that he doesn't give you the end of this scene. You just hear about it after the fact.
Mhm.
That you've got this, and I kind of feel like again this is probably purposeful because not only Matt walking in on the Golem as it's already done some of its handiwork uh makes for a much more terrifying and impactful reveal. But then also, I feel like he's also kind of setting you up with a red herring here because you think, oh, here we go. Here's the big climactic fight scene. And no, this isn't even the climactic fight scene. It's Matt, I felt channeling upstairs. There's trouble. You have to go. And, he hesitates because he doesn't want to leave this fight,
Mhm.
but there's something even worse upstairs that he has to go deal with.
Well,
Um,
and here's a good description as we were talking about with the non-human aspect of his opponent. When he comes in, it gives a description of how he's normal looking, gives a very vivid description of the evil behind this person and how he kills the kin. Uh, but then Matt had seen Madral move, but this
mhm,
fella was quicker. And just the impression we've already gotten from Land fighting Murdral, from the whole. I think Rand even going face to face with one or two here and there. That's already inhuman,
mhm.
and this is the next level. When you're the best in the room, time to find a new room, and Matt has found the new room.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And the well, your point of how evil he is when he snaps the kin's neck. The sound of her neck breaking was like a dry branch snapping. He let her drop in a boneless heap and gazed down at her. For a moment, his smile looked rapturous. So this thing is super duper creepy, bad evil, and super duper, as it says. See, yeah, down here where when it kills Nalesean is the man made a Murdrol seem stiff. So he slid around Nelson's thrust as though there was not a bone in his body, and then he literally rips the poor guy's throat out with his bare hands. Um, I I like the way Matt reacts. Um this is another one of those things that I don't think I noticed until a couple of rereads in is there's the coolness factor of what Matt does here, but I also think this is Jordan telling you just how good a fighter Matt is
Mm-hmm.
because um after seeing what this thing does, he he just throws himself into him. He's he's got to close the distance. You can't, I mean, he saw what happened to him
Mm-hmm.
after a thrust of his sword, and so Matt
Well,
crashed into the killer's back and they all three hit the floor together. He had no compunctions against stabbing a man in the back when it was necessary.
and this is a good example of how Jordan probably studied people like Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee talked about fighting someone with a knife was actually not a bad thing because the person was only thinking about the knife and using it as a weapon. Matt has no limits. He just body blocked the guy.
Yeah. He
Even
just
though
tackles him to the floor and goes from the Ashendari to daggers and just starts stabbing him in the back.
mm-hmm. And I like it how they still make it so human up until the moment after he stabs him a few times. He thinks
Yeah.
he I mean he's just the way he's describing the scene in Matt's mind is I just won this. It's not the most proper way to do it, but
Hmm.
gosh darn it, look what he just did. And then the dude spins around. The thing, dude. It. Are we using the proper pronouns?
It's an it because despite its anatomy, it's not actually, I mean, because it's kind of an empty vessel. It's like something that's just like all cartilage, right? It looks like a man,
Well,
but it ain't.
it's freaking Terminator 2. It's
Yeah.
it,
Uh 770. So after the freakish, unnatural twisting and turning, the man smiled at him with a knife sticking out of his side. He smiled. He wants you dead as much as he wants her, he said softly. Um, so that's not gonna make Matt feel good. Um, I do like the Matt snagging the knife out of the air when the Golem throws it back at him. Um, and then let's see. The man in the gray coat saw it too. With a smile, he turned toward her, sighing because he's gonna do it, but he's gonna bitch and moan, but he's too tired to bitch and moan, so he's just gonna sigh. Matt tucked the useless knife into its scabbard. You can't have her, he said loudly. Um, And then to the point, I think the throwing himself into his back and stabbing him in the back was a setup for what happens right here. Is it's not just the kind of the movie typical movie trope where the good guy's getting his butt kicked and then he just happens to notice something and he uses it to defeat the bad guy. He's already set up that Matt is a very um functional fighter. That he is
He's
he
scrappy.
yeah, he's scrappy. He's all around. He is not tied to just one style or one thing. So when he sees, oh hey, this thing can hurt him somehow, and he seems a touch afraid of it, it makes perfect sense that he would use it as a weapon
Mm-hmm.
and go walking towards it. And then it squeezes through a hole. Uh, and this is so 772 is when Elayne, you know, is properly appreciative and apologetic. I saw what you did, Matt. With him, we might as well have been chickens in a box with a weasel. Channeling wouldn't touch him. The flows melted the way they do with your. Thank you, Matt. I apologize for everything I ever did or thought. She sounded as though she really meant it. And considering what just happened and how utterly helpless she had to feel, I mean, in a lot of ways, what she just went through was what Nyneave went through when she was thought she was drowning. Um, and she was utterly helpless.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I like his answer to "You'll have to let me save you at least once. I'll see what I can arrange."
mhm.
Oh,
Uh,
hold on. Nothing. Another thing for spoilers. Hold on. Okay, go ahead.
um, um, I like that he gives you just a brief, view that enough that you can kind of see it in your head when Matt asks Harnan what happened out back. Um, so you get that all wrapped up here. Um, dang it, I don't think we're gonna finish because we're 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 gonna do good just to finish Matt's part of it here
True.
because this is the last um this is the last chapter of Matt is 39 here. Let's pause for a second and then we'll wrap it up here.
We're going to pause for a second for station identification, and we'll see you on in a minute.
All right. Poor Matt. So in thinking about how to wrap this up here, it just kind of step back and look and see how much crap happens to Matt here in a very short time span.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is they get up to go to the Rahad in the morning, and he has to deal with the Tylin nonsense. He has to deal with Elayne and Nyneave on multiple levels and all that nonsense, and then the horrible fight that he has to go through, losing someone he considers a friend, but is also his subordinate in Nalesean. That's got to suck, especially seeing it right in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and now he's stuck in a room full of women arguing with him. Um, not only stuck in a room full of women arguing with him, but as he realizes he's being set up. So 783 is when it gets interesting and becomes one of my favorite scenes in the entire series. Is the way Matt, not just the way he addresses the sea folk, but I love the I love the whole scene here that Jordan lays out with Matt's thought process of it dawning on him what's going on. And we know he can read a room. We've seen him read a room. We've mostly seen the results of him reading people and reading the room. We get an in-depth look at his thought process here, which I love. As it suddenly it struck Matt that he was the only man present. Um, the only man surrounded by a wall of women who apparently intended to let him beat his head against that wall till his brains were scrambled. It made no sense. None. They looked at him, waiting. Nyneave in yellow slash lace trim blue had pulled her braid over her shoulder so it hung down between her breasts, but that heavy gold ring, Land's ring, he had learned, was carefully positioned to show anyway. Her face was smooth, and her hands rested in her lap. Yet sometimes her fingers twitched. Elayne, in green Ibudari silk that made Nynaeve seem covered up despite the smoky lace collar under her chin, gazed back at him with eyes like cool pools of deep blue water. Her hands lay in her lap too, but now and again she would begin to trace the thread of gold embroidery that covered her skirts, then immediately stop. Why did they not say something? Were they trying to get back at him? Was it just a case of Matt wants to be in charge so much, let him see how well he can do without us? He might have believed it of Nynaeve any time but this anyway, but not of Elayne, not anymore. So why? And then he looks at the wise ones and he reads the wise women and he reads them. Uh, he looks to the Aes Sedai. On 784, he turned to the rest of the Aes Sedai, faces infinitely calm, infinitely patient, except Marilyn's eyes flickered past him toward Nyneave and Elayne for one instance. Saritha began slowly smoothing her curts under his gaze. You know what this makes me think of? I just realized this is that great scene at the opening of Maverick, where Mel Gibson uh, says, "Yeah, I'll lose for the first however long," and you see him just his eyes flicking around the table as he starts to notice things and he starts to see all the little tells from everybody, and suddenly you understand why Matt is such a great poker player.
Well, and for those in the audience, if you want tells in poker, don't watch faces, watch fingers. People have a harder time controlling their hand movements than they do to their face. So
Mhm.
there's your trick. I can't remember her name, but one poker champion won in her first year of playing because she knew the psychology of hands versus faces.
I
And
did not know that, and that's what he notices about Nynaeve and Elayne is they're
mhm,
sitting here staring at him, but their fingers, Nynaeve's fingers are twitching, presumably like she wants to pull her braid because that's what she does. Elayne starts to absentmindedly trace her embroidery while her face is serenely calm.
which
Um,
I was just doing this, and I want to start taking up playing poker more, but I realize I do this a lot when I'm thinking. So either I'm going to have to control not doing that, or make it to where I do that no matter what I'm thinking.
mhm.
And so it's you, you can combat a tell two different ways. You either do it all the time, or you don't do it at all.
Yep. Um, Slowly he walked to the sea folk. He just walked, but he heard someone with Marilyn sniff, and Saritha muttered, "Such insolence." Well, he was about to show them insolence. If Nynaeve and Elayne did not like it, they should have taken him into their confidence. Light, but he hated being used, especially when he did not know how or why. Um,
Welcome to your life, Matt.
but he knows he's being used, and he knows for some reason the sea folk are the sticking point, and he's the one that has to dislodge it. He doesn't know why, doesn't know how, but all right, fine. I'm gonna do it, but I'm gonna do it my way. And let's see. Okay, so 785, he starts talking to the sea folk. Nynaeve Sedai, uh, she said dryly, I believe there was no mention in your bargain of my having to listen to this young oakum picker. I I don't bloody care about your bargains with anybody else, you darter of the sands, Mat snapped. So his irritation was not that well under control. A man could only take so much. Gas rose among the women behind her. Something over 1,000 years ago, a seafolk woman had called an Asinian soldier a son of the sands just before trying to plant a blade in his ribs. So he doesn't even know what it means, but he knows it's a pretty harsh insult, and he's pissed off. So much so that
This would be the moment. So proud dad moment. This would be the moment if we were talking about something like this. My son would blurt out, "Your father was a hamster, and your mother smelled of elderberries."
uh well, hopefully then that he has quick hands, because Mat doesn't know what it means, but it's such a grave insult that the mistress of the freaking ships, and we know Seafolk plays a huge emphasis on decorum and protocol, and she pulls a knife on him in the middle of all this.
And
And
again,
Mat just snatches that out of
another
her hand.
Matt's the best fighter in the whole series. He It doesn't say he locked her arm and wrenched the dagger from her hand. It says he just snatched it. He just
Mm-hmm. Um,
and then gives another
I,
insult that we
yeah,
can
I
we
I
can
also wonder if this is another um little tidbit, little hint of Jordan saying, yeah, the whole Tylin thing's not that rapey, because
he could
if
have
he
done this
really
at any
wanted
time.
to,
Yeah,
I
he could
mean,
have.
for
Yeah.
crying out loud, he is not acting like he did with Tylin. Snatches it right out of her hands, and he could still hold on to his temper too. No matter how many women thought they could dance him for a puppet, he could. You listen to me, you bilge stone. All right, maybe he could not hold it. Nyneave and Elayne need you, or I'd leave you for the Gholam to crack your bones and the Black Jaw to pick over what's left. Well, as far as you're concerned, I'm the master of the blades, and my blades are bare. Once again, he doesn't know what the heck he just said. He just knows it's important from a vague old memory that got stuck in his head. Uh, and so he makes a he makes a bargain that she should find another blade to stab him for. This is the bargain between you and me. You go where Nynaeve and Elayne want, and in return, I won't tie the lot of you across horses like peck saddles and haul you there. And I like this moment, not just because the scene is so great, but once you start to like dig in deep with the lore of the world, you can have a fun little conversation here of, it is agreed under the light, the words seem pulled out of her mouth because of supernatural fate Tavarinness, or because
He was right.
not only Mat was right, and on some level she knew it, or more to the point, we were just talking about poker, and as a poker analogy, Mat so upended her that he put her on tilt,
Mm-hmm.
that she can't think straight, because he read the room so well and then read her so well that he pushed every button he needed to push to just uh make her common sense short circuit.
Well, and you see this in police interrogations and things of that light. Is they're not using pain or anything like that as a weapon, but they try to get you emotional. They either play to the grief of the situation
Mm-hmm.
or the anger of the situation. They try to just make you mad on purpose.
Mm-hmm. And then there's a reason they repeatedly ask the same questions. One, to annoy you, and two, to see if they trip you up, to see if something changes.
Mm-hmm. Or
To
to see
see if
if they can get you after they get you into an emotional state. The
mm-hmm,
same question has a different answer.
mm-hmm. um all right, and then shenanigans. So the rest of that scene really is just set up for the beginning of the next book, which we'll talk about when we get there. Because I'm pretty sure Path of Daggers opens up with the girls leaving to go to the farm. Um, So then, um, well, I do like wrapping that bit up. 788. I am very sorry to have used you, Elayne said before he could get a word out. Her smile flashed that dimple at him. We did have reasons, Matt. You must believe that. So Elayne at least does seem like she has changed as far as Matt concerned, but Nyneave is still Nyneave, which you do not need to know, Nyneave put in firmly, flipping her braid back over her shoulder. Um, with a practiced toss of her head that made the gold ring bounce on her bosom. Lan must be insane. I must say, I never expected you to do what you did. Whatever in the world made you think of trying to bully them? You could have ruined everything. What's life if you don't take a chance now and then? He said blithely. He, Matt is smart enough, and you just saw his thought process. He was fully cognizant and aware of what he was doing. He could have explained it to her. He could have said, well, this is, he could have explained it to her the same way he explained to Lan the strategy for attacking Couladin in front of Karheen.
But
He could have laid it all out like tactics on a map, but he's annoyed at Nynaeve because she's being a little bee.
well, especially his little comment, next time you have to make a bargain with the sea folk, let me make it for you. Maybe that way it won't turn out as badly as the last one. And of course, she gets all flustered and he's like,
Mm-hmm.
"Yep, bad, not bad shooting blindfolded." But then
Yep.
Elayne
Yep.
goes back to where she was before, a most observant subject.
Mm-hmm. In tones of rueful amusement. Um,
Which he makes the comment of being on her good side might not be the best thing.
might be worse than being on her bad side. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Her,
Yep.
her anger is probably easier to manage than her curiosity.
Uh, all right. So that wraps up that, and then we get to the fun of Matt and Tylin saying goodbye. Uh, and I like the way the I think this. I mean, just this paragraph tells you all you need to know about who Tylin is and what her intentions were and what's going on here. Um, well, before that, I like that when Tylin comes up, uh, Tylin had all but slipped his mind, but he had not from hers. She caught him up before he took two steps. Nyneave and Elayne paused at the door with Avienda and Bergie watching. So they saw when Tylin pinched his bottom. Some things nobody could learn to live with. Elayne put on a face of commiseration. Nyneave of glowering disapproval. Although I'm wondering, is it disapproval at him because she still thinks um he's at fault here, or if she's now glowering disapproval at both of them. Um, Avienda fought laughter none too successfully, while Birgit wore her grin openly. They all bloody knew.
As
Uh,
we
I,
talked about earlier, they've
I,
already talked.
I have to think that Birgit might have figured it out sooner than anyone.
Oh yeah.
Her
Oh
being who
yeah.
she is.
Well, and
And
we also don't know if any of that came out in their drunken conversation
that's a
too,
good
because
point.
remember, we don't get the conversation, we get the important bits of it.
Yeah. Um. All right. So Tylin, Nynaeve thinks you are a little boy needing protection. Tylin breathed up at him. I know you are a grown man. Um. I
The
think we all know
dirtiest.
what she's. I think we all know what she's saying there. Her smoky chuckle made that the dirtiest comment he had ever heard. The four women by the door got to watch his face turn beet red. Uh, I will miss you, Pigeon. What you did with Renelle was magnificent. I do so admire masterful men. I
And
so
this is to the point where Scott argued with me a couple episodes ago
mhm,
because it was just her asserting her, the reversing the female role and everything.
mhm,
But no, there is a reason she picked Matt. And she saw the signs of it, but now she saw the proof of it right here. So we get it out of her own mouth that there is that special thing about Matt that makes him something that she would
yeah.
pursue as the cougar.
Well, yeah, it's what just happened there was the story you've related about being at a wedding and the bridesmaids talking about how good you looked, and it, kind of made your wife peacock a little bit because, yeah, that's
Hmm.
my man. And
Hmm.
that's basically what Tylin just does here is, man, that's hot. The
Hmm.
way he handled that situation, uh, got her blood pressure going.
Yeah. Which, if he wasn't so busy, he could take advantage of that right now. But
Oh yeah.
you know,
Um, so I think
and
this
then
is,
we get the insight here again.
yeah, I'll
I'll
miss
miss
you
you
too.
too. Yeah, and
Hmm.
to his shock, that was the simple truth.
Yep. I I think for all of the people that complain about the interaction between Tylin and Matt, this is why I've kind of been pointing out the little tidbits as you go, and then I think this is Jordan just, you know, uh uh giving you the full picture, and he's just been showing you little bits here and there, and now he's showing you the full picture of this is what it always was. No, this wasn't rapey. This wasn't what Elayne and Nyneave thought it was. You know, this was in some ways, I mean, I don't know that he would use this language, but this is just adults having a kink. This is just a role play. This is just, making things spicy.
Hmm.
But in that moment of honesty, because this is goodbye, it's I'm gonna miss you. I'm gonna miss you too. And he means it. It's the simple truth. Um uh oh, I forgot this part. Tom comes in.
Well, I
Oh
mean, there's a sad moment first. We got
yeah, that's
Narum and
true.
Lopin, Nelson Stout
Yeah.
Man.
Yep.
And we make so much out of servants and
Mhm,
masters, and those words make everything sound so bad. But you take this day and age, there was an identity attached to that,
mhm.
and this person was of a servant class in tier anyways, but he was the servant to
The High Lord.
Nelson, the High
Yeah.
Lord, and so that was prestige in his vocation. But not only that, he spent so much time with his High Lord that you develop an affinity to that person. And now he's a lost puppy.
Mhm. Uh, so Tom and Julian come in carrying Matt's stuff, and you have to know Tom knew all the juicy details well before anyone because he's Tom.
Yeah.
I found this on your pillow, Tom said, tossing him the ring he had bought what seemed a year ago. A parting gift, it seems. There were lovers' knots and some other flowers strewn over both pillows. Matt jammed the ring onto his finger. It's mine, burn you. I paid for it. The old gleeman knuckled his mustaches and coughed in a failed effort to stifle a sudden wide grin.
Well,
Because
even if he
Tom's,
didn't pay for it with gold, he still made a correct
that's,
statement there because he paid for
I,
it.
I, I feel, I feel like that's Jordan telling us that Tom is thinking, yeah, you did.
You're
All
still
right,
paying for it because I'm giggling.
but then, what happened to Matt's luck? Because Oliver's gone missing. All right, well, the guys are going to stay behind and go look for Oliver, while the girls go take the bowl and do their thing. Um, uh, I I do like their parting as well. Well, I forgot this part too, is the dice have started up again. So the bottom of 791. The bowl is too important, he told them. That Gholam is still out there, and maybe Malkavian then the Black Kajah for sure. The dice thundered in his head. Um, Keep them safe until I can reach you. Keep all of them safe. Startlingly, Avienda said, "We will, I promise," because obviously Avienda is going to assume that he's talking to her as well, because that's just who she is. Um, Apparently, she did not understand she was one of those to be kept safe. Of course, she didn't understand that. Not even Elayne did, and they glare at him. Lan and Birgit understood too. Nynaeve is my life, Lan said simply, putting a hand on her shoulder. The odd thing was, she suddenly looked very sad, and just as suddenly, her jaw set as though she was preparing to walk through a stone wall and make a large hole. Um, I love those little moments that, and this is why I love Jordan's style, is because Matt doesn't understand what just passed there, but something very deep just passed between Nyneave and Land because Nyneave understands what
That the purpose of her is the only thing keeping him alive right now.
she is literally the
Yeah.
only reason he's alive, because of the breaking of that bond.
Yeah, and it's
Um,
not alive in the "I love you" sense. It's alive in the he would probably go get himself killed.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, I also like, and this is another thing that was kind of a reread notice, is that Nynaeve, before they part, Nynaeve tells him that there's a storm coming and that it's not a storm. And let's see, it's going to break soon. I know it. And then, right after that, nodding, he made his escape. The dice in his head like echoes of his running boots. That there seems to be this kind of connection between Nynaeve's storm sense that isn't actual weather sense and the dice.
Mm-hmm.
That there's a parallel there.
Well, remember what I brought up a couple episodes ago that we talk about Egwene and Rand being parallels. Actually, Nynaeve and Matt are parallels,
Mm, mhm.
which makes me wonder who is Perrin's parallel from the village,
Good question.
or is he completely paralleled with the person he got with Fail?
That's an interesting thought. Um, all right, so then um we get several pages of basically Jordan using this moment to give you an even deeper description of Ibu Dar than we've already gotten is a lot of what this is to me, as
Mm-hmm.
he's running back and forth. Uh, and then ships start exploding. And it's the flaming Seanchean. So he knows exactly what he's looking at, and everyone else is Aes Sedai are trying to kill us.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but he
No need for
still can't.
memories here, just because he
Yep.
has his real ones. Yeah.
So now the need to find Oliver is even more urgent. Uh, but I think he doesn't think it, but he does know from previous experience, if you stay out of the Sanction's way, they're not going to bother you. So, he just ducks out of the way of this Sanction column, and he's not armed, he's not in their way. They're not going to pay attention to them. Um, and you get in much the same way when I talked about Rand and Turok, and you get a sense of what's going on around. Uh, this scene always goes on longer than I remember. Every time I reread it, I'm like, I keep thinking it's about to end, and it's there's several more pages of Matt darting about the city trying to find Oliver, and you just get the impression of uh of a rapidly rising battle happening all around him.
Mm-hmm.
With explosions, there's got to be shouts of people running back and forth. Um, and then when a bunch of Tylin soldiers actually do form up and bloody fools that soul damn will, and yep,
Mm-hmm.
they go kersplat. And then what happened to my bloody luck? He shouted. He had time for that, and just time to realize as brick and timbers crashed down on him that the dice in his head had just stopped. Stupid dice.
Okay.
Yeah. I, it it ends so perfectly, Matt, with the snarky, snide comment, and then the noticing that the dice had stopped as a wall literally falls on him.
Well, and as these books go, the details in the end keep us from finishing in the manner we had intended. So we will have another episode on Crown of Swords, and we need to move on to spoilers and comments.
Yeah, that one should be much quicker because
Yeah, this one might be just a kind of a dash through at the end. So
yeah. Yeah,
it's about
I think
50
next time.
pages. Yeah.
I mean, if I didn't have a hard out here, then we could probably get it knocked out and just have a slightly longer episode. But
Okay, so do you want to do spoilers or comments first?
let's go to the comments first.
Uh the first comment, you're late. Yes, I know it came out late. We did it on Friday, and then we had a bunch of crap that we were doing, and finally got it up Sunday. I think Jordan created some terrific cultures, but the sea folks started out interesting. Yeah, that's I think our consensus on that.
Yeah, they kind of become just the bargain,
Mhm.
and incredibly uh rigid, I guess. That's all they are, and that's all that matters, you know?
And realistically, when you talk about the way the last battle plays out, it it's really centralized around the last battle location, which
Hmm.
doesn't lead to naval battle.
Yeah.
And had it been a more systemic battle throughout the continent or even the world, you might have seen that play out a little bit more on a naval side. And that probably would have been more interesting, but it also would have been a whole nother book, I think, to
Hmm.
keep that world alive.
Hmm. Um,
Let's see. I'm trying to translate this. As terrible as it seems, it turns out. Okay. So
yeah, the
I
second
read
we
that wrong the first time I read it. Yeah. As terrible as
yeah.
it seems. Yeah, and that's. I mean, we're in spoiler territory, but that is the key
Hmm.
to the cleansing of the taint,
Hmm.
which I was talking about, the new evil versus the old evil, the what the dark one wants versus what human evil is. The dark one actually had very little to do with Eredhall becoming Shadar Logoth. In fact, it's a place Trollocs don't want to go. Uh, so it is the human evil versus the what is true evil underneath the veil.
There is an interesting thought. You said Baruna, but you meant Marana. Um, hadn't noticed before how similar their names were. Um, no, it's Karuna and I don't know. Marana, the Gray.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that part of why they were so shocked. I mean, I think there is an element of the hierarchy and how dare you put this person who's so low above us, but I hadn't thought of that before, that she was the head of the Saladar embassy. So
I thought that was specifically because she was a gray, though.
yes, because she was a gray.
Mm-hmm.
So and it they actually, I think they talk about that when they start to get in detail in the convoluted hierarchy of Aes Sedai, that um for a particular mission, if someone is particularly well suited to it, that person will be put in charge, and others who would normally stand above will defer to that person.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, which is why when you got her point of view, she was trying to, you know, pull the reins back to assert her authority.
Now, I like the next comment. I think Caroline Demodred
Mm,
was brought into the story to personify, personalize the world's reaction to Dragon Reborn. I will agree with that. Yes,
mm,
in the ideal, she is like the middle. So what we have is the rejection to the Dragon Reborn because he's going to destroy the world. And we could probably figure out who that is if we talk about it. Caroline Damodred would be the middle of the road. I'm questioning, but I'm open. And then we've got someone like Masama, who personifies the I'm all in because
mm.
I'm crazy.
The zealotry, yeah.
Yeah, the zealotry. So yes, she's the ideal. She should be the thing that leads forward because she needs the proof. She needs reason and ration to balance the fact that you are this thing that is supernatural. So we got Masma, Caroline. I don't know who we would put in the diametrically opposed no matter
Well, it
what
would have
camp.
to be what's his face, the head of the White Cloaks who just got killed, assassinated.
Oh, Pedron Nail.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
no, even Valda, because he is the epitome of the evil against him.
true, true.
Yeah.
Because yeah, that's a good point because
Well,
Niall
which
is
actually now you get a damage red as the middle, and you get a damage red as the person who satisfies the
mm,
Valda opposition
yeah,
later. Yeah.
yeah, because Niall is more calculating and thinking. Valda is more reactive.
Yeah.
Um,
And who takes out Masama in the end? Fayul, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
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 Um, so this is something that uh I kind of got mixed up here. That they're not related because uh Rand's mother Tigraine was married to a Karhinen, but then left. So Galad and Rand are half brothers,
Oh yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
via his mother, who was Andoran. So they aren't actually related. But this is something I for some reason had never thought of. But yeah, it never comes up. But Galad should have the strongest claim to the Sun Throne.
Which is funny because he wears the sunburst.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think Jordan never mentions it, but I think he knows.
Yeah, you,
I
you
think
would
he
think
throws
that's
these
part of the
nuggets in there.
sunburst.
Yeah.
Yeah, the symbolism of the sunburst there. 'Cause yeah,
Hmm.
he is the eldest son of one of the higher ranking members of the Karhina nobility.
Yeah,
So
he
yeah.
had a better claim to it than who was the one that Tom killed? Galdrian? Damage red?
The Barthanes.
Barthanes,
No,
yeah.
no, no, no.
No, Barthanes was the
Barthanes
dark
was
friend.
torn apart,
Yeah.
presumably by the Golem. Um,
Yeah, no,
and
yeah,
and then yes, it was a Damodred. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That's who Tom went and killed. Because Tom's a bad mamma jamma. Um,
Well, it implied he went and killed. It never actually ever says.
very strongly implied.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just like the Moghedian rape, it's implied. We don't need to go into the details.
Yeah. Um, so this is a good point, and you do get it a little bit from different perspectives that and Swan I don't think ever really realizes it, but Moraine eventually does, that the Aes Sedai believe that they can deal with Rand like the Tower always has with false dragons. Even those that realize that he cannot be gentle think that they can control and use him, but they're still thinking of him in the same way that they think about false dragons.
Well, we get this
They're
told in a story in book 2, I believe, with Egwene when she goes through her accepted test and she's in the
yes,
towers and she's in
that's a good
Amirlin
that's a
and they
good
have
point.
him in chains and they're trying to keep him in captive in
Hmm.
that story, but still keep him intact because they know they're going to need him.
Yeah.
And in her inner thoughts actually tell this whole scenario out. Elida doesn't get that though. Elida's a
Nope.
red.
So she has the same idea, but much more viciously so. Like
Mm-hmm.
he would have been locked away until it was time to drag him out and put him in front of the Dark One. However, that was supposed to happen. Whereas Sawan, her idea was to uh yeah, you're not a prisoner, but you can't leave. I
Mm-hmm.
think was Sawan's idea. But yes, but by his very presence, he would have destroyed the tower as an institution, and that is something that Egwene notices and points out later while she's after she's been captured by the
Well,
tower.
it's the two different personalities. Elida is controlled by force. Swan is controlled by manipulation.
Hmm.
And Swan thought she can just keep him in line, whereas Elida thought she had to force him to be in line. Let's see.
Yep.
Rand could not have negotiated.
that so the point about Tyr is a good one because the prophecy strongly implies, if not outright says, that Tyr is going to fall because of the coming
Hmm.
of the dragon, and that's why they keep it locked away. They gobble up anything that they even think has to do with the power and block it away in a basement and try and pretend that the power doesn't exist. Sawan very harshly relates what it's like to be someone who is born with the spark. If it's discovered that you can channel, you are bundled up and shipped off to the tower immediately,
But I
and
was
you
I
are
was
never
speaking
allowed
more
back in.
to the one specific High Lord that's in question here, because you can imagine a world where if the proper avenues were taken,
Hmm.
that he might have been open to it and might have been able to convince other people to be open to it. Because something to fall is it can take multiple meanings. You can
Hmm.
have a diplomatic fall as easily as you can have a physical fall. Uh, and the reason he's in the situation he's in is because it went the other way. Now, whether it could ever have happened the diplomatic way, probably not. But I was speaking from his mentality that he might have been
Hmm.
open to something like that. Now,
Yeah,
the other High Lords probably not, but he might have been.
yeah, but I think part of what Scott is saying there maybe is that Darland is post hoc rationalizing
Mm-hmm.
because how how was Rand supposed to do that given you know talking to Darland? The question would be, how was the dragon supposed to do that given the laws of the land in Tyr? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it is technically illegal to channel, or I think even to be a channel. No, it's you can't even be a channeler in and go through Tyr or go through Amadisia, but I don't know about Tyr. But so how was Rand supposed to do that? But I think that connects to uh his next point that falling in love with Caroline made a marked change in him, which that's yeah, that's how it works. That's what we were talking about um with Caroline and Darlin and Rand and Min and the woman being their grounding wire. Or as Scott says, he's become interested in something beyond the privileges of his noble rank
Mm-hmm.
and something he can't just take because this isn't someone of of lesser uh of lesser station, and this isn't your kind of typical negotiated political marriage. These are people of pretty close to equal standing, and he has asked, and she has the ability, the station to be able to make the decision for herself. So that is going to make a change in him.
Let's see. Have to agree with Min and Caroline. Rand actually had nothing to gain by dueling Raitan. Well, no, he didn't. He thought he did, and I think we were rationalizing why he thought he did. But
Yes.
but but the thing is, what we'd never get here because of the way things turned out is if he had dueled and won, would he have revealed?
Mm.
That's the key to it because he had nothing to gain as cousin Thomas,
Mhm.
but he had something to gain if he had won the duel and then revealed who he was,
Yes.
because then he would have already gained the respect before he gave the big reveal. Now, the fog spirits as a bubble of evil phenomenon, I still kind of hold to it was more death because the bubble of evil or
Mhm.
the fog seemed to be not as powerful as it was in Shider Logoth, but
But
it was
very
similar.
similar. Yeah.
But at the same time, there's nothing to be said that it couldn't have been both.
Mhm.
Because just as, and we're talking about parallels here, we have the two wounds crossing each other now. The whole situation could have been the two evils crossing each other.
Uh, More death somehow manipulating or influencing a bubble of evil.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, or trying to do his thing, which opened a bubble of evil because
Mhm.
we created a rift in the pattern.
Yeah. Yeah. And when we first learn about these bubbles of evil, it's just like gas bubbles drifting up from a bog is how it's described. But it's also described that it's possible that since they're since they're within the pattern, since the pattern is the Dark One's prison somehow,
All you need
that
is a weakness in the pattern. Like you're more likely to get a staph infection if you have an abrasion to your skin,
yeah,
you know?
and Rand is kind of a weakness and a strength. So it's like a flux point. It's like a
Mhm.
crossroads. So you would think that a bubble is going to be more naturally drift to those kinds of points. Like there's going to be a stronger magnetic pull or whatever.
And we've already discussed that Rand is neutral. For every bad thing that happens, something good happens. For everything good that happens, something bad happens around him.
Yeah. All right, well, that's all for the comments. What did we have for spoilers? Um,
We got more comments.
oh wait, did I miss something?
Yeah, remember you got to put it on uh
No, I did this time.
newest to oldest, not top comments.
Oh,
Cadsuane and
I
the
missed that.
Aes
Yeah.
Sedai are wrong. There are times when balefire is necessary. Even Moiraine acknowledges that when she uses it from necessity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is. It's a touchy subject because it's something
Yeah.
that yes, you could like if Rand knew he would undo Matt's death by balefiring Ravin, that would have been a positive use of it. But the problem is there are things that happened in that time that Ravin had kind of a influence over that might have been undone, and I think that's why it was banned from the beginning. Because when you're messing with space time, it's every interaction they have, and just like with Rand just by being, things around him are balanced, positive and negative. Well, even bad people do things that end up in a good thing. A great movie for this is Butterfly Effect with Ethan Hawke, not Ethan Hawke. Oh shoot,
Yeah, guy
guy
from the
from
70s.
'70s show.
Kelso, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But he would go back and he would eliminate the bad thing, but then he would also end up eliminating all the good things that ended up happening around the bad thing over and over and over again, and kept making it worse by trying to recorrect it. And so Robin, something he might have done might have had a positive effect down the road, but we don't know that because it was undone. Now we only saw the good things that ended up coming out of it, but there might have been other things that came out of it that were positive. Uh Jordan really recycled Darlin, the swaggering boastful
Yeah,
high boy.
this is an interesting comment to me, and I am curious that this would be one of those questions that sadly, can't be asked. But this, if I were to, you know, if I were to ask a question at a book sighting or a convention or whatever, this would be something that it is kind of one of the just those minor things that I would love to know because it does kind of seem like it that the Darlin we see Matt Thump in The Dragon Reborn and who we see here, um, was that intended, or when you got to the point of this scene, did you decide that I'm gonna reuse that guy. I'm
Well,
gonna I'm gonna make that guy a bigger character.
but earlier in the episode, Scott comments, I'd say falling in love with Caroline made him mark change in
Yeah.
Darlin.
Or
So yeah.
vice versa. Did you go back to when you were planning out the series? Did you go back uh or when you were writing The Dragon Reborn, did you say, "Hey, I'm going to use that guy that's going to come up over here just to name drop him here."
Mm-hmm. I never cared as much for Cadsuane. I don't hate her as some do, but she's never been very likable. Deep inside, she has the same arrogance and her sandpaper
Mhm.
personality. See, I actually liked her.
And I think here's the difference is because you get enough of Cadsuane even before you get her point of view passages to uh to first um infer and then later be sure that at least she's doing it for a good reason. She sees what's going on better than most Aes Sedai in much the same way that Moiraine and later Morana sees what's going on, but she has a much different tactic for getting to what she sees to be the goal, that this needs to happen. So you can dislike her tactics, but I think what makes her a sympathetic character is to to know that that is at least in part a veneer.
Well, and she lays it out in her own mind
Hmm.
of the and any of us that are parents know the conundrum of what is spanking for their own good and what is abuse, right?
Yeah.
And she lays out in her own mind, she's trying to find out when she should spank and when it's not appropriate.
Yeah.
And she makes no bones about it, that she is trying to find that balance.
Yeah.
Spoiler point, the entire series only takes 3.5 years, which is actually good because we keep talking about development of characters, but also
Mhm.
thinking of the age of the characters and think of your own life
Yeah.
between 18 and 21. How much do you mature
Yeah.
versus the next 20 years after that? It's a pivotal moment in people's lives. You're taking that step to becoming an adult. Uh, Readers love the hobbits, Eamon's Fielders, mostly
Mhm.
because they are innocents, making them crass and vile would have ruined that.
Yep. It
Yeah,
sure did. Ugh.
yeah.
Yep. 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 And
Okay.
so, I don't remember what we have for spoilers, but
My teaser for Lan and the Foxhead. You said,
yes, I
if you're
thought
thinking
that's
what
what
I'm
you were thinking
thinking, yeah.
about. Yeah.
He said
Yeah.
even with the Foxhead, I wouldn't be Nynaeve's husband. Basically, is what he said, and just the fact that he ends up giving Lan the Foxhead later to deal
Hmm.
with a channeler who is an
Hmm.
arrogant sob. Basically, his opinion of Nynaeve now is what Demandred is later. So yeah, and he gives Lan the Foxhead to deal with it. Still think it would have been better if it was Abel, but
Or Tam, because of Demandred's
I still think the
hatred and
best
rivalry for Lews Therin and Rand, and
I
for
still
Tam to
think
come
the best
along.
thing would have been the quarterstaff versus the swordsmaster
That, yeah. So
because we
my,
got that
yeah.
teased in book 3. That
Hmm.
would have been the best
Hmm.
ending to that. I would
Yeah.
love to see the notes to see if I could see if Jordan was going in that direction and Sanderson changed it. Or I would love to if I had one question to ask Sanderson, I would ask him about that ending right there.
The Demandred's ending.
The manager's ending with Lan,
Yeah.
and I would say because it would have been foreshadowed in book 3 that someone like Abel with a quarterstaff would have
Hmm.
been the one
Hmm.
because you would have Matt giving his dad the medallion and his dad doing the basically the
The
prophecy thing that Hammer says in his story.
the hardest part about that to overcome with that though would be, um I mean, it's his dad, and you're sending him into a really deadly situation. Whereas Lan
Well,
is basically a born warrior,
you
so,
could have
and a friend,
easily,
so.
but his dad was in on the battles anyways.
Hmm.
You could have easily had a moment where he knew his dad was going into this situation with the Shara because of the way the battle was going, and him saying, "You know what? I think you're going to need this. I don't want anything to happen to you, Dad."
Oh, or you know what? Abel just takes it. He just pulls a mat, and he 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 you know cracks a smile, cracks a joke, and is quick with his hands, and then wanders off, and all of a sudden Lan realizes the medallion's missing.
Yeah, something like
You
that.
know,
Yeah.
because that would be, you you would really get a good, oh, so that's where he gets it from.
Mm-hmm.
There, you would have that moment too. I brought up I was going to talk
And
about
you could
when.
even have had Lan keeping everybody else off Abel and Demandred fighting.
That's a good point too. In
Yeah.
much the same way that he does in with Moraine when they get
Mm-hmm.
into fights together. He anything that gets close goes slicey dicey.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah. Uh, what else did you jot down? I was going to talk about when
I
Matt
jotted
ties
down.
up Tylin, but I think you get that with the goodbye here in A Crown of Swords.
Yeah,
Uh,
no, I got up Elaine's comment about I should save you sometime. Do we ever get that? I can't think of anything.
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
You
And
know.
then he made a comment about if they ever knew I blew the horn or whatever. Well, we know from the fan boards and stuff that him dying in the last
Hmm.
book
Hmm.
is actually makes that internal thought not even important now, because it doesn't
Yeah.
matter who blows the horn now.
Yep. 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 Yeah. And that was something that I don't think I ever figured that out on a reread. I don't think I noticed that till I was looking at boards and things and said, "Oh, geez,
Well,
yeah."
I knew that from ending the books because Oliver blows the horn and it
Mhm.
works. But what was his death? I thought it was the hanging, but apparently it wasn't the hanging, it was Robin.
Yeah, because he wasn't
Yeah.
dead then, because he was able to be revived via n-
Yeah,
mundane means. But
but realistically, what's dead, right? It's
I mean, who knows? But with Robin, he was, dead as a doornail, and the only reason he came back is because time got reversed.
mhm.
So that was not mundane means. No share. All
That's
right. Well,
all I had. Yeah.
that's all I had, and I've got a hard out to go pick up a kid, uh, and then theoretically lift some heavy things.
All right. Well, we didn't make it where we wanted to go, but there's
Yeah.
no way we could have got through after that. The more we got into it, I'm like, there's so much in this
Yeah.
these
But
couple
we should be
chapters.
able to wrap it up quick next time, and then we can have a discussion on, all right, do we go on to Path of Daggers, or do we want to pause and do New Spring here? And
Yeah. So
leave
let's get
leave
the
a
votes
comment
in the
about what
yeah
y'all think.
yeah leave the votes in the comments. New Spring or Path of Daggers. We'll be back on Tuesday. I don't know what we're going to talk about,
I had an
but
idea, and hopefully I remember it.
we still never really finished the last discussion.
Hmm.
But so we could always go into that. We might do a part one, part two.
Yeah.
We might do some fitness stuff because I spent an hour with a client today. So on my other channel, there's a hip hinge video. It's about 6 or 7 minutes, and it's about how to bend over without using your back. And we spent an hour just working on that all day. So it's so important. And I did in 6 minutes again, it takes in practice a lot longer. And so that might be something to go over as well.
Okay.
Getting
Yeah.
back to not even the basics, the
A-
pre-basics, the
And
normal
maybe
human movement.
because you've talked about this before when we do programming, and it's sometimes hard to grasp because when you're programming movement, there's a difference between a squat movement and a hip hinge movement. But
Mhm.
the hip is moving, so they seem similar, but they're not.
Well, but the one is prerequisite to the other. So
Hmm.
it's
Hmm.
one of the most important things we can reteach
Yeah.
ourselves if we live in seated modern societies. So,
All right. Well, we'll do that for sure, and then we'll see what else pops up. All right. We'll see y'all later.
all right, later.